Our next speaker is a champion of innovation over regulation. Under his leadership, North Dakota has been a national leader in innovation, creating a boom across not just energy, but agriculture and technology sectors as well. Please welcome Governor Doug Burgum.
Good morning, everybody. What a fantastic day to be here with all of you, and I want to thank everybody involved in this conference today to bring together all of you leaders that are literally changing the world. And I want to say, as I always do, and to start with gratitude. And gratitude for this group is more than just thank you for a great conference, thank you for leading your companies, thank you for creating so many amazing jobs. The gratitude that the nation needs to feel towards all of you is the fact that this industry is empowering the world. It is improving lives. It is inspiring success wherever you go, and that it is actually making the world safer. But what I'm going to talk about in the few short minutes with all of you here today is the fact that all of you are up against an administration that's trying to crush this industry. They're trying to harm U.S. energy. They're trying to put us in a position where we're energy poor instead of energy dominant. And the impact on that is empowering dictators, and it's making the world less stable, and it's hurting our economy in many ways, and it's not helping the environment. That's the sad part. Their ideological goals in terms of what they're trying to do is not even achieving that. So let's get into it and talk about that. But first of all, I do want to say also maybe one more thank you, and that has to do with all of you. Raise your hand if you're making investments in the state of North Dakota in this group. Look at that across this room. It's your investment, it's your risk-taking, it's your work that you've done that's turned North Dakota into an energy powerhouse, third largest oil producer in the producing state in the nation. And we had record gas production last month, thanks to all the work that you're doing. But it's not just the production, it's also the people. When I'm on the ground in North Dakota and I meet the people that are working on the rigs, driving the trucks, serving in your communities and the way you're giving back, it's transforming. It's transforming our state and it's transforming our nation, and I see it every day. And every one of the people that work for you is a hero to me because they're out there doing the hard work. And then all of you are making a difference in terms of the innovation that you're driving. And without that innovation, and Harold talked about it last night, but without horizontal drilling, we wouldn't be in the position. The whole talk that John gave this morning about energy dominance would not be happening without innovation. And so this is so important that we drive forward, that we have leadership in our country that understands that innovation is the path forward, not regulation. And the regulation that's coming is not just limited to environmental regulation, financial, all the ESG pressure that's coming on, the regulation relative to workforce and processes and acquiring, and of course the environment, BLM, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, EPA. Right now we've got a whole of government approach in North Dakota pushing back across over 20 major rule pushes that are coming at us. And of course we're the tip of the spear, winning battles in federal court, North Dakota leading the way to try to, this is the only administration that has failed to hold the lawfully required lease sales on federal land every quarter, going back to Harry Truman. Even Obama held them every quarter. And Biden hasn't held them. We sued him in court, we won. And of course the federal government, after having an 84-page from a federal judge saying you need to follow the law, they thought their right response would be to appeal. Because apparently the federal government thinks they don't have to follow the law, but all of us have to. So anyway, it is a full-on battle in our state in terms of what we're trying to get done, but innovation is absolutely required. And I would just say in terms of innovation on the horizontal drilling, it has other impacts, which I'll talk about in terms of what it means for land use. But think about when I first became governor, I was in a Continental Resources drill shack, and I was there with a young man, and I was marveling at the fact that in North Dakota, the Bakken, as many of you know, is only 30 feet thick and it's 10,000 feet underground. And all of you that are developing there, you go down, you turn the corner, and you go 2 miles sideways. And I said, wow, how do you stay in a 30-foot band that's less than 1/3 of 1%? And the young man, wearing the lab coat behind the computer said, sir, if your house was 2 miles down and 2 miles over, I could drill the lockout on the front door. That was 5 years ago. It's advanced so far since that, and in North Dakota right now, 3/4 of our permit that are coming in right now are 3-mile laterals or longer. And so when we do that, you produce it more effectively, and the land use gets better and better. So the innovation is helping the environment, the innovation is helping everything. And as we talked about this morning, energy security is national security. That's what this whole conference is about. And the idea that somehow we're going to put up with an administration that has an energy policy that's effectively, I say the Biden energy policy is written by China. It has to be, because why would you outsource our future to a country if the drive of our energy policy is to somehow help the environment? Why would you outsource our future to the world's biggest polluter? You saw the charts this morning. The U.S. has made more progress, reduced CO2 more than any other country in the world. China right now, 2 years ago when I would give a talk, I would tell people China's opening up a coal plant every 2 weeks. And they'd be shocked. But the last year they picked up the pace. Now it's down to almost 1 a week. They're on track to have over if you got a large coal plant in North Dakota is 1,100 megawatts. They will be opening almost equivalent of 100 of those based on what they've got in the construction queue. You could shut down every coal plant in America, and China in the next 2 years will open more. We could totally destabilize our grid and affect our manufacturing. You could totally do that, and China would be producing more. Only they wouldn't be doing it with the technology that we're applying in North Dakota and the United States, where we take out the NOx and the SOx, and now we're going to be able to take out the CO2. We can have clean baseload coal in our country through innovation, not through regulation. Why would we take your taxpayer dollars and create 500,000 EV charging stations, subsidized? Why would we do that? And then subsidize a specific kind of car with a specific kind of engine. We're going to subsidize at $7,500 a pop a battery-powered car when we have a country that's got controls 85% of the rare earth minerals is our adversary. Why would we do that? That makes not make common sense, doesn't make sense in terms of physics, it doesn't make sense in terms of the environment. There's nothing about it that makes sense. Because those batteries, China's tearing up the world, whether it's Africa, Indonesia, whatever, to get those rare earth minerals. The reason why they call them rare earth is because it's parts per million. You have to move 100,000 pounds or more of earth to get the material to make one battery that we're subsidizing in one car. And then that battery, that solar panel, they're all being made in manufacturing plants in China powered by coal. You saw a slide this morning about how China leading the world in EV. The Washington Post this last week on Wednesday said, look at this. China's leading the U.S. They're our role model. They've got much higher penetration of EV sales. They never once in that article mentioned the power source for those EVs. Those vehicles in China are all being powered by coal. When they plug them in, they're powered by coal. Makes no sense. And then if we want to talk about, if you want to talk about cleaner, safer, more efficient energy production, if that's the goal of the Biden administration or the extreme radical environmentalists, you should demand that every ounce of energy, every electron of energy is produced in the United States. We have the most rigorous regulations. We produce it cleaner, safer, and smarter than anyone else in the world, and yet somehow we're going to shut down this industry and the baseload power industry, and we're going to offload that to some other part of the country where they don't even have an EPA. This gets personal for me because during the time when we had the demand drop, the State Department went to Venezuela, a country with a atrocious human rights record. 7.5 million people have left that country, fled that corrupt country. They went to them and said, can you produce more energy? They went to the Middle East, let's fist bump some people and say, hey, could you guys produce some more energy? They did not come to North Dakota, Wyoming, Montana, Oklahoma, Texas, Alaska, the major oil producing states. Nobody, the State Department didn't call us and say, can you increase production? They didn't call any of you. They even had in the White House a memo that went out that said they couldn't meet with oil executives. I'm sure none of you were meeting with them the first year and a half because it was like, we're not meeting with oil executives. And so anyway, if we want this, so the bottom line of all of this is, and it was done so well by John this morning, but we ought to be selling to our allies, not buying from our adversaries. People ask me, what's the first thing you would do when you're in office. This is what it would be. Start selling allies. And a number of you have done this because with the LNG that's going to Europe, but it's just a start. Because I would maintain that Putin never invades Ukraine, would never have invaded Ukraine if not for the fact that he had all of Western Europe completely dependent on his energy. He was basically, thought he was immune from retribution because of that. I mean, and of course for him, I mean, we treat Putin like he's a president of a country. He's, fancy word, oligarch. He's a mob boss. What's he worth? $70 to $100 billion. He gets a cut of all the oil revenue. I mean, oil price goes up. Good for him. Good for his bottom line personally. A country that doesn't care, we'll pull people out of prison, put them with the Wagner Group, send them to the front lines for a World War I type battle. They're not valuing life. They're not doing what you're doing. They're not caring about employees and trying to make their communities better. We have to understand who we're competing against, and we need to do this, and it doesn't need to stop. It can't just be this when we talk about Europe, because I'll tell you, when World War II broke out with Pearl Harbor, my dad, living in a small town in Arthur, got up and went down the road to Castleton 15 miles away and signed up for the Navy. He never had seen the ocean and didn't know how to swim. There's no pool in Arthur. We had gravel streets in the town I grew up in. Because he had a college degree, 90 days later, he was made an officer, proposed to mom, got married, got on the boat, didn't see her till the end of the war, and he was over there. And half of the MIAs in American military history, one half of the MIAs are World War II Navy sailors. Dad was on a ship at Okinawa. If one half of the MIAs, the way you get that 40,000 U.S. Navy sailors, 151 destroyers protecting aircraft carriers at Okinawa, 129 were hit by kamikazes. It's only by the grace of God I'm actually standing here. But with the brave Marines and the Navy, they fought their way to Japan. But you know how we beat that totalitarian military thing? We had submarines that sank every oil tanker that came into that island. Japan is 125 million people in the size of North and South Dakota, and they have virtually no oil and gas production. We were over there. Some of the greatest work that the United States ever did was after that with MacArthur, turning that country into a democracy, turning them into an ally, turning them in for a while before China passed them just recently, second largest economy in the world, a liberal democracy, our partner. And what do we do now to our ally? We are not providing them energy. Of course we're not providing them energy because we're trying to kill the U.S. energy industry. And so who is it most at risk? They get all their energy coming through the South China Sea. The world's largest navy is now China. And this is what we're against. Our policy is not about supporting ourselves or our allies. And then, of course, you saw this slide this morning, so I'll go quick. Unleashing U.S. energy versus draining. This is absolutely ridiculous because this is the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. This was drained to lower the price at the pump ahead of the midterms. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve became the U.S. political midterm lower prices reserve. And this is a catastrophe for us, and you heard about China's filling up theirs and the U.S. was dropping theirs, but this is how politicized they become. We need to keep growing our output through innovation. There's all kinds of ways to do that. I'm thrilled to see between leaders in the biofuels and ethanol and Harold Hamm himself coming together to say, hey, we can solve all kinds of liquid fuels because let's end any idea that there's a battle going on between ethanol, biofuels, and oil and gas. Let's just say that's over. Why? Because if you're on Team EV, you're on Team China. If you're on Team Biden, you're on Team China Energy Plan. If you're on Team Liquid Fuels, you're on Team USA. You're on Team USA and Team US allies. Yes, of course, there's a place for electric vehicles for certain niche things, but it's not every vehicle. It's not BNSF trains coming across the northern plains. It's not for airplanes flying across the Pacific. I don't think any of you are getting on a battery-powered plane anytime soon because you would understand the weight ratio and physics wouldn't make that work. But we can be the world's leader in sustainable aviation fuel. We can have low-carbon liquid fuels. You don't even have to be concerned about climate because there's a demand for this. People pay for this. We have to fill these markets. So we're going to keep investing in growing our output through innovation. But we need, as you know, we need reliable, affordable domestic energy. That's absolutely core to what we have to do in our country. And of course, the Biden administration trying to kill that. You heard about it this morning, the Willow Project. I got a pop out here on the Willow Project. That white dot in the middle of the Willow Project is the size of the thing that everybody's fighting over. It's less than 1 square mile. It's barely the size of 2 golf courses in the entire National Petroleum Reserve, which is the size of half of Oklahoma. Half of Oklahoma That was put away for a national petroleum reserve for times like we're in right now when we're competing with now a global adversary like China. We're in a Cold War with China. We're in a cyber war with China. We're getting attacked every day from a cyber attack from China. I can tell you that as the governor of a state. We do. But this is what this whole debate is about, is less than 1 square mile. This is ridiculous that we would even be having this be, trying to have this be a sensible debate because of the land use. In North Dakota, where we now, again, 3rd largest oil producing state in the country, the total surface area, because of the 2-mile and now 3-mile laterals that are actually occupied by land use by the oil and gas industry, is less than 1/20th of 1% of the surface area in our state. It's less than 40 square miles, all the development we've had through the whole Bakken and before. 1/20th of 1% of the state, and those pads, are bermed, they're fantastic, and so, you can take 4 acres out of 1280, and that's what's dedicated to this oil and gas industry. You can't do that with wind, you can't do that with solar. The land use in North Dakota, we still get to ranch, and we get to farm. We get to do all the land use things we do when your industry is there. They're completely compatible, and it's also great for wildlife, and it would have worked here, because we know it works in North Dakota, it would have worked here. I literally don't know what argument they're using other than the power of the executive branch to crush projects that would allow us to have a sea lane that would go from Alaska to Japan, to South Korea, to the Philippines. All of our allies could be supported by this. And then, of course, you can't get a pipeline permitted in this country. We've been talking about it for 5 years. The first year I was in office, after we battled through the whole Dakota Access Pipeline problem, where the Obama administration was actively supporting a 10,000 person protest, in our state on federal land the day I took office. It took us 76 days to defuse that. We got that done. And we could be, again, supplying all of our allies in the Pacific. You saw the charts. You saw everything that's happening. You saw how they're controlling the South China Sea. Japan gets all of their energy imported by boat through the South China Sea. When we were there with our delegation from North Dakota last fall, while we were there, North Korea literally shot a missile over the top of the island while we were there. I've been in a lot of international business meetings because I've had people working for me in over 120 countries before I got into this job. I've never been in a meeting where the people we're with were getting a text that a missile was coming. But that's the world that we're living in right now. So, better economy, cleaner energy, national security, that's what we get. And then meanwhile, when we don't have that, of course, the current policy is driving higher inflation. The average family in America is paying $700 more per month for their basic goods, food on the table and gas in their car. And the food on the table, of course, agriculture, one of the biggest inputs is energy prices. So that's driving that. But how can we provide low carbon liquid fuels and low carbon baseload? Well, we can do that through innovation. I'm going to have a chance to moderate a panel this afternoon about North Dakota's geologic jackpot. We've got the ability in underground to store all the CO2 of the United States for the next 50 years. 252 billion tons of storage. We've got the pooling, the permitting, and the liability protection in place. There's over $40 billion of projects coming to North Dakota right now because of this capability, and everything from base load to pig iron to steel to other forms of manufacturing. It's fantastic. And we know that we've got on the panel this afternoon, you're going to hear from Chris and Denbury. And on the next slide, they're producing carbon negative oil. You got a company in this room that's greener than Patagonia using the same formulas, and we're doing it right there in North Dakota, and they're stimulating 1980s wells that are producing at the highest levels they've done in decades. Supplying critical baseload power, we've got some of our North Dakota power providers that are here. They're leading some of the largest projects in the country relative to CO2 storage. We've permitted over 100 million tons of CO2 storage areas in North Dakota. You can't get Americans to agree on anything today, but in a 32 square mile, 90% of the landowners this year voted to get a paycheck for being able to do CO2 storage, because we define in state law that those farmers and ranchers that own the surface own the pore space where the CO2 is going. So if you have the right regulatory environment, then innovation can flourish. And it's one of the reasons why North Dakota's got the highest GDP of any Republican-led state in the nation, and we're on track to have the highest GDP in the country. Supplying critical baseload power, this is absolutely necessary. As I said, there's a large market opportunity for low-carbon liquid fuels. For sure, sustainable aviation fuels, if the heart of that is going to be the heartland of America, and that could double the size of the market for low carbon liquid fuels, and this industry working together with agriculture has a chance to do that. To close this out, I just want to say that one of the things that's happening in North Dakota is that we're building a presidential library to honor Theodore Roosevelt. And this wouldn't be possible without the generous support of many people, but specifically Harold Hamm. Harold this last year made the decision to be the lead gift, the lead donor with an incredible $50 million gift. What you can see there in that slide is what will be one of the most dramatic buildings in America. It's on 93 acres just outside the park. It'll overlook the Theodore Roosevelt National Park, the cradle of conservation. But as Theodore Roosevelt famously said, conservation is as much development as it is protection. He understood that when he put away the 230 million acres of land in our country, that was our nation's balance sheet. That's what we were going to use at times like this. It wasn't we're going to lock them up and never cut a tree and never develop and never harvest any rare earth minerals and never develop any oil or gas resources. It wasn't that. But I think that the work that all of you are doing is work worth doing, and far away the best prize that life has to offer is the chance to work hard at work worth doing. All of you are doing work worth doing. All of you are making a difference, not just for our country. You're making the world safer. You're making the world more prosperous. And I want to just say in closing, as I said at the beginning, what all of you are doing, you're doing the exact 6 words that we cover in North Dakota every day, because our government runs on, in North Dakota, we got together and said, wow, when I got here, I got 170 silos and budgets all spread out. We all got to be working on one thing. So in North Dakota, we work on empowering people, improving lives, and inspiring success. And it turns out that that's exactly what all of you do. We're so aligned. Thank you for your investments in North Dakota. Thank you for making the world safer. Thank you for making the nation more prosperous. Together, we need to turn the Biden energy policy 180 degrees in the other direction. It's going to happen if we can all work together. Thank you very much. I'll see you this afternoon and see you tonight.